How to become a rich man. All you have to do is impersonate a real rich kid. Ripley is very good at this kind of thing. He's a great mimic. He can play the piano in its entirety as soon as he sees someone play it. He can imitate someone's signature in such a way that even a professional note-taking expert can't tell. That's impressive. Ripley was originally an ordinary worker. Once he accidentally met a top tycoon while working part-time. Ripley was wearing a borrowed school uniform. The rich man thought he was a student at school, so he asked, "Do you go to the same school as my son? Do you know my son?" Ripley didn't even think about it and said yes. A few days later, the rich man approached him again. He asked him to do him a small favor. His son hadn't been coming home. The rich man wanted Ripley to go to Italy to persuade his son to bring him back. The tycoon promised to give him a big reward. Ripley didn't even know what the rich man's son looked like. He looked confused. When he didn't say anything, the rich man turned around and left. He just took it as a yes. Ripley had no choice but to take on the assignment reluctantly. He travels to Italy and finds out what Dickey likes beforehand. He creates the perfect chance encounter. At the beach, Ripley poses as Dickey's classmate. He greets Dickey with enthusiasm. "Hey, buddy." Dickey doesn't question his identity. He asked him what he was doing here. Ripley said, "I'm here on vacation. Just like you." Dickey laughed. "You are so white. How can you be on vacation?" Ripley was embarrassed, but he quickly changed his tactics. He made his intentions clear. "I was sent by your father to take you home." Dickey immediately flipped out. He told Ripley to get lost. Ripley didn't say anything and packed his things and left. As he was leaving, Ripley's bag burst open. The records inside fell out all over the place. Then Dickey was surprised to see. "Do you like jazz too?" Ripley said a lot of things about jazz. Dickey was very happy. He liked jazz too. So he took Ripley as a like-minded friend. He let him live in his mansion, took him drinking and singing, riding bikes on yachts. Ripley had never enjoyed this life before. He really thought of Dickey as his friend. Until this day, a woman's body was floating on the sea. This woman was Dickey's girlfriend. She was dumped by Dickey and found out she was pregnant with Dickey's child. She had no choice but to leave on her own. Dickey is a little worried that this is a big deal. Ripley promised Dickey he would never tell anyone about it. But how could Dickey trust someone so easily? He asks Ripley out. Ripley starts planning his future. Dickey gets a little impatient listening. He yells at Ripley for being a parasite. "You're only living off of me." He tells Ripley to get out. Ripley is shocked. He really thought Dickey was friend. He never thought Dickey would think of him that way. The two of them get into a big fight. Dickey's insults got worse and worse. In the face of Dickey's insults, Ripley finally could not stand it anymore. He picked up the oar and hit it directly. Once, twice, 3 times, until Dickey was out of breath. Ripley was scared. He sank the boat. Then he swam to shore alone. Ripley had never killed anyone before. He was so scared. He rushes back to the hotel and asks the front desk for his keys. The receptionist pointed at him and yelled out Dickey's name. It turns out that after spending a lot of time with Dickey, Ripley naturally began to imitate Dickey, so much so that the receptionist took him for Dickey. This inspired him. He decided to live under Dickey's identity. That night, Ripley took Dickey's luggage and went to another city. He changed into Dickey's clothes and took off his glasses. He used Dickey's money to get a top suite. Then he went back to his room and called the front desk. He asked the front desk to send a bottle of wine to room 1364, and room 1364 was the room Ripley opened with his real identity. He did this to create the illusion that Dickey was still alive. Soon Ripley uses Dickey's identity to pick up a real celebrity named Emily. Today they go to the opera. A woman calls out to Ripley during the intermission. She is Dickey's fiancée Marge. Ripley rushes to put on his glasses and revert back to being a worker. Marge asks Ripley about Dickey. Dickey suddenly left and she couldn't find anyone, so she was very anxious. Ripley looked at Emily, who was talking to someone not far away. He was worried about his identity being exposed, so he said to Marge that tomorrow at 2 p.m. "See you at the cafe. I'll tell you more about him." Marge nodded. At this point, the opera begins. Ripley takes off his glasses and turns back into Dickey. Then he took Emily and left the theater. When Ripley sent Emily home, Ripley said with great regret, "I'm sorry, I still can't forget Marge. I can't lie to you. I can't be with you anymore." Emily was very sad, but she was still generous enough to break up. Ripley said, "In that case, I'll buy you coffee tomorrow at 2 p.m. Consider it a final goodbye." Emily agreed. The next day Ripley was around the cafe early to observe the situation. Emily and Marge ran into each other. Emily asked her if you were here to see Dickey too. Marge was surprised and said, "You too?" Emily said, "Yes, we saw the opera together yesterday." "Ah, so that's it." Marge took it for granted that Dickey had met someone else and abandoned her. She left with a broken heart after his affair was resolved. Ripley rents a new luxury apartment. He's making a good living. Now he's becoming more and more like Dickey. But soon Dickey's friends come calling. Freddie was surprised. Dickey and he were supposed to go skiing, but he suddenly disappeared. So he found this place. The apartment was rented in Dickey's name. Freddie asks Ripley, "Where's Dickey?" Ripley says, "He's not here." Freddie looks at Ripley and thinks he's a little strange. He always thought he was dressed like Dickey. Freddie turned around and he didn't ask any questions and then turned around and left. After walking downstairs, Freddie met the landlord. So he asked her, "Have you seen Dickey?" The landlord said yes, he was just playing the piano in his room. How can that be? Freddie was confused. At that moment Ripley was looking around to see what was going on. The landlord saw him and called Dickey's name. Freddie took one look at Ripley. He instantly understood that Ripley was impersonating Dickey, so he went back to Ripley. As a result, Ripley smashed it straight down. This was the second time Ripley killed someone. He took the body to the car and dumped it in the field in the night. The next day, the police came to investigate. Ripley was going to use a prepared story to get the police to come. Instead, the police said they found a sunken boat on the beach. The boat was bought by Dickey. Ripley panicked. He saw that his murder was about to be revealed. He fled to another city. But before he left, he did one thing. This man wrote a suicide note in the guise of someone else. The note indicated that Dickey had killed Freddie. To atone for his crime, Dickey decided to give up everything. Finally, he imitated Dickey's signature on the suicide note. Even the professional note identification experts did not find the letter unusual, so the police quickly closed the case. They concluded that Dickey had killed Freddie. Then he left the world because of the crime. But the rich man didn't believe that. He found out that Dickey had cashed a large check before he died. What does a dying man need money for? It's a very strange thing. Marge thought so, too. She found Ripley and snooped around. She found out that Ripley had Dickey's ring in his house. Dickey had said he would never take it off. Ripley panicked. He now has no choice but to kill him. Ripley frantically searched the bathroom for the tools of the trade. Then he found a razor. By now, Marge had sensed the danger. She gets up and walks out. Ripley calls out to her and walks towards her a little. Marge saw Ripley's bleeding pockets and shivered. Ripley was nervous too. He doesn't want to kill anyone. That's when the door suddenly opens. He's Ripley's best buddy. In front of the man, Ripley had to stop. The next day, Marge told the rich man about it. He had someone bring Ripley in, and then he told Ripley to talk to his lawyer directly. The lawyer offered him $30 million if he can keep it a secret forever. It turns out Dickey had a violent streak since he was a kid. He almost killed a classmate when he was in school. So they took it for granted that Dickey had killed someone. But they thought Dickey wouldn't leave the world on his own but would abscond with the money. So they concluded that Ripley, who played with Dickey, knew the truth. So for the sake of the family's reputation, the rich man wanted to give Ripley a sum of money. Ripley was dumbfounded that there was such a good thing. So he took the money and left. Ripley took his best buddy out with him. Now he can finally stop pretending. He could finally live the life of a rich man. But accidents often come from the unexpected. Emily, who had been using Dickey's identity to flirt with him, knew him. She yelled Dickey's name at him. Ripley was embarrassed to say yes. This scene was seen by his brother. Jake didn't break it to him, but went back to his room. Ripley pushes open his door and confesses everything to him, that he pretended to be Dickey and killed his friend, and that he'd somehow gotten $30 million. Ripley walks up to Jake a little bit, and leaned over him. The rope in his hand tightens a little. Ripley knew when he told his first lie, he couldn't stop. He ended up killing his best brother with his own hands. Then he walked back to his room in a daze. There are only 0 lies and countless lies. The same goes for killing. He used lies to get away with it again and again. Each time, he gets away with it. In the end, he is greeted by endless darkness. This is the end of the movie. If you like it, please follow and like and comment. See you next time.